I think a lot of teacher aides are probably not aware that there is help out there. I think that's something that needs to be really well advertised. And I think for me, for a long time, I wasn't able to have any help outside of, our school bubble. So knowing that there is the help out there is really important. So I think really important to get that pushed out to the teacher aides so they know they don't have to wing it.
The Better Mindset Podcast.
Welcome to the Better Mindset Podcast, episode 16. I'm Mark Herring.
And I'm Bex Rose.
And on today's episode, we talk to Nic Ward, a teacher aide from Brookby School in New Zealand here, who's doing some great work with his students with assistive technology. And this is somebody that you've got a connection with, Bex, so you'll be interviewing or introducing them in a second. So that's going to be pretty cool. And everyone, stick around to the end of this chat too, because we'll be giving you some key takeaways from the conversation, how to engage your students when you are working with students that have learning difficulties or learning needs. And we're also going to give you some tools that we discussed too. So there are links in the show notes, but we just want to let you know about that. Stick around to the end. And guest on the show, we've got Nic with us today. And I know, Bex, you've got a real connection with Nic, and I know that you've worked together. So I'm going to throw over to you to introduce our guest.
Yes, I am so excited to have Nic here. Nic is an incredible wahine toa, which means a strong woman. I have known Nic for a really long time. We've got two Mias, actually. We've got two Mias, Mark. You didn't know that. Mia and Mia started school together when they were 5, and now they're 14. So we've known each other for that time.
And I've got a Mia, so that's 3 Mias.
Oh my gosh, we've got a triple whammy. So, and in that time, I've watched Nic grow. She started her teacher aiding career with us out at Brookby 7 years ago, apparently. So Nic is an incredible, she connects with the kids on this deep level. She helps these kids feel empowered in their learning to grow, and it was such a pleasure seeing her grow alongside the kids, as well as watching the kids grow into these confident kids that were really keen to get into their learning. So not only that, she also, this is a fact you didn't know, Mark, she plays the guitar for the Kapa Haka group and is now leading the Kapa Haka now that I'm out of there. So it just
wow. G, C and D, talents. Is it? G, C and D? Yeah, with a couple of A minors.
So jack of all trades, she does all the things. She's in classes, she's got groups. Anything else, Nic? Can you add to your plethora of absolute gem things that you do at school?
Oh, I run the library.
Oh yes, that is another thing. Yeah.
How could you forget that?
I know, and it's the library is hard work, having to do stock takes on those things. Get me out. So anyway, welcome, Nic, and it's such a pleasure having you here, and it's really nice to be able to connect on this level. I know it's something that's out of your comfort zone, but that's what we like to do, don't we, Nic? Oh, yeah. Push ourselves outside about that comfort zone.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're going to be talking to you, Nic, around we worked on getting some funding. In fact, we had an incredible, let's start from the very beginning. We were really lucky at school. We were part of a COL, and in that COL, we were able to access a learning support coordinator who dotted around both our school and another school because we had a smaller role. And I'm going to say her name, Marjorie. She's amazing. She's now an RTLB, and she is an incredible one of those ladies that you just meet in education. You go, holy moly, you know so much. You're an incredible lady. She had an amazing rapport with students and staff alike. Yeah. She managed to help us get some funding from the ministry to get an assistive technology grant. Now, this is something that the ministry do offer schools. However, there is a few hoops to jump through, and I've actually spoken to the lady recently. We can put you in contact if you are keen listening to this to talk to someone. I've got her contact details. She's more than happy to help with these applications. She just can't come on the podcast today. Anyway, so she got the assistive technology grant for a couple of our kids at school. From there, Nic was handed there's a device and a set of headphones and said, off you go. which is pretty much what happens to teacher aides, right? Yeah. Nic, can you vouch for that?
100%. Yeah. We're always.
This is the spring. Yeah. So here's the spring program. Go and do it. No. So from there, we got these devices. They were for kids. Can you remind me of their diagnosis, Nic?
We had multiple diagnoses, mainly things like dyslexia and I don't think it's called global development delay anymore. I think there's another term for it.
And dyspraxia. I think dyspraxia was another one. Yeah, so we managed to get this funding. We got this equipment. Thankfully, at the time, Marjorie had such an incredible knowledge of the tools that could be used, but this is not normal in schools. You don't normally have someone with this incredible amount of knowledge and understanding, and her background was RTLB, which she's gone back to now. So she had
which
all
is
that
Bex. You might need to explain that RTLB. What's an RTLB? Resource teacher of learning and behaviour. Right, I did it. Right, carry on.
Wow.
There are other names for it. But yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, hey, Little Ray of Sunshine, absolutely, that's what she was. And so Nic, can you talk to us about the journey you had? So tell us, from the beginning, you got this technology. So tell us what you did next with the kids and Marjorie, and how you managed to use it to that successful point where the kids were engaged and equitable learning was happening.
Well, if I can go back a little bit further than that, when I first started, we didn't have any kind of real technology for any of our children that were struggling. So if they were struggling, we just had to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, which we all know that's not really ideal. It's not, and we also now know that kids all learn so differently. You can't just say this is how we're going to teach our kids and go off they go, and they all learn amazingly and they all learn what they're supposed to. I'd spent a little while kind of going, thinking about the different ways kids learn, and some like to be able to use their hands, some like to be able to use their voice, some like to do things on their own, some in a group. There's just so many different ways that kids like to learn. And we kind of had realized that the kids that were really struggling with the reading needed something to help them, particularly as we moved into more technology and they were doing a lot more work on their Chromebooks and things like that. They'd have their Chromebook off they'd go, and they'd just sit there looking at it like, what am I supposed to do with this? Which is really, really hard, because you've got all this stuff here and it's supposed to be helping them, and it's just making it worse for them, because they're like, okay, now not only can I not read, but now I've got a computer in front of me and I don't know what to do with that. So looking at different things that we could use, speech to text and that sort of thing. I bought a little microphone and they had some headsets, and we'd sit there and we'd record ourselves and things, they would be able to go back and check their work like that. And then Marjorie came along, and she really revolutionized it all, put everything in place, and from there it grew. But it was a really difficult journey for me, because I didn't at the start I didn't have that help. So having her in and give me some direction and be able to say, well, there's actually more that we can be doing for these kids. We don't have to sit back and go, let's just cross our fingers and hope for the best. Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen in schools a lot with support staff, like your role, and I've heard people describe your role as learning assistants. I think that's something that's quite common in New Zealand now. A lot of people prefer their teacher aides to be called learning assistants, and that's really effectively what they are. But one of the challenges, I think, for a lot of leaders is to start seeing those people in the room as not just somebody who's going to keep the kids engaged or manage their behaviour, but actually be somebody who's a value add in the learning process. But when you've got learning tools and processes that are now digital, I think one of the things we've seen over the years, Bex, is that a lot of learning support staff have been left behind in that professional learning journey, that we're so engaged in trying to lift our teacher practice, we kind of forget about all our support staff as well. We expect that they'll just kind of pick it up in the background, Nic, didn't they? Like, tell us how you got across it, because like you said, when the students have got a Chromebook, they're expected to pick it up and run with it. We're kind of expecting teachers to do it. It's even, you're kind of like the third in line. It's like teachers, students, and then maybe TAs further down the back. How did you learn the skills to get that? Was it just Marjorie, or were there other things that you did? How did you get upskilled? I had Bex
as well, and she's always really
awesome,
great with get everyone set up with technology so that we all know what we're doing. So I was very lucky. I guess I could have had it way worse.
I think you did a lot of self-teaching as well, Nic, as well. Like, you were really engaged.
I have, yeah.
Well, let's talk about Bex. So I'm interested to know what Bex did, right? So you were the DP in the school, Bex. What did that learning support look like for Nic? How did you, or maybe Nic could explain the story. Tell us what you did.
Oh, cool. Do you want to go, Nic, or do you want me to talk?
Well, from my perspective, if I ever had anything that I come up against that I had no idea what I was doing, I would just go and say, hey, Bex, how do I get around this? And if she didn't know, she'd find a way.
I think it's just that relationship, right? Yeah. I always make sure I always harp on about relationships and having relationships with your staff and making sure you know how they tick. And and when it came, I knew it was like that was a problem. Like something was happening. It wasn't like she was constantly knocking on my door or anything. It was like, okay, this is something that's going to help the kids. So I knew it was something that was important to do, and we needed to find an answer. I think having that learning support coordinator was an absolute gem. Like that's all I can say, is because I was so busy in the DP role, then having to have someone there to support me in that Senko role was an incredible opportunity, because that Senko role is massive, and having to be across everything and all the new things that are coming out was really tricky. So I think having that, I was also really excited to find the new tools. I was really excited to see these kids being able to use this technology and help them in their learning. The last thing we want is them to sit there and feel like they're even worse off than what they began with, because they're already finding learning so tricky. So helping find something that will support these kids is like at the top of the list. Everything else can go down. So I guess with Marjorie found, you found the text-to-speech tool. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? That was a really useful one.
I suppose there's lots of different apps that are available. I was using Speechify and Mote, where we could record things so that the kids could then listen to what our were. And I have to say that the classroom teacher was also using that. It wasn't something different with me and then different with the teacher, and that it was quite consistent, which makes a big difference. But just
really important
having that tool for them to be able to, because they've got the ideas right. They know, like, if you wanted them to give you a story, they could give you an amazing story, but they get it from here onto a piece of paper. You would sit them there and they would sit there for half an hour, and you'd be lucky if you get a line out of them, right? You put them in front of a computer and go, right, what's your topic? What do you want to write about? And they've got all this information, and it just comes out. And because they're talking, the computer's picking it up, and it just, out it comes. They can listen to it back and go, oh, that's not what I wanted it to say. How can we change that? And, they can see where it needs to change. And it becomes this whole thing where they're doing their own editing, and next minute you've got a fantastic story from a child who you thought couldn't write a story. It is not just, for me, I look at it and I think, wow, that's just incredible. But for the kids, the smile on their face when they look at this story that they've written, and they're like, I wrote that. Yeah,
I did that. Oh, I've got goosebumps. The stuff is like, I miss the stuff so much.
These types of things, just seeing the transition. And once they start seeing that actually they can do it, and I've always said that once a kid gets confident in what they're doing, they will excel. It's the confidence that holds them back, and once they've got that, they're away.
That's so good. It's one of those things. I think a lot of people in leadership have been hearing about accessibility tools for a long time, and I think, Bex, that phrase of accessibility, it's kind of got, like, it's lost its impact. But when you actually think about it in terms of removing those barriers, Nic, it's like you've got this massive barrier between me and success, and all of a sudden you've taken that barrier away. And for a lot of kids, it's a pencil, and they just don't have the fine motor skills, or whatever, the literacy skills that they just don't have. You've all of a sudden you've opened up a whole new pathway of opportunity, and it changes how they feel about themselves. It's incredible, isn't it? Can you give us an example? Can you think of a student, without mentioning names, can you think of like an example recently where an accessibility tool has completely changed something for a student?
It always does. As soon as any student starts working with these tools, and they can see the difference that it makes in their work, because they can see it, it's just, they're away.
Totally. I can even say that my son, who hasn't been diagnosed with anything, but he was just a typical boy that didn't want to sit there and write with a pencil. As soon as I remember, he was actually in with Nic at the time in the class. That teacher also, incredible teacher, amazing teacher. She would just absolutely fire through anything new, and that Mote stuff she would spend actually it was probably just same amount of time for a teacher to be able to give feedback via Mote and and being able to press the little button and say something rather than type. The kids are going to listen to it because they're not going to read the feedback on there. That's proven fact. But B, it opened up So not only were these kids offered this opportunity who had got the assistive technology grant, it was then like, okay, let's make this like a normal thing in class, right? So then my son was in the class. He got to benefit from that because instead of him writing 2 lines because he got bored or got distracted by Harry next door that had fidgeting with his pen, he wrote a story and he came up with all these great ideas, and that's the most amount of work he's ever done in his life.
It is great. I also think that that's quite important, not just for the children that are struggling, but for all the other children in the class as well, because they do all benefit from it. It doesn't matter, how amazing you are or how not amazing you are at writing stories, you're going to benefit from it. I mean, you think about it, an accountant doesn't write all their stuff out in books anymore, right? And kids, when they grow older, they start getting into the workforce. They're not going to be, they're going to need to know what they're doing.
Absolutely. This is my argument all the time. I do have this argument to people and say like, okay, when was the last time you got a pen and paper up? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when was the last time you used a pen?
Like,
exactly, yeah.
When was the last time? But also, I do it all the time. I'm like, hey Siri, blah, 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 and I'm talking to them. So it's actually a skill that kids need to learn because this is how you're going to communicate with technology. And keyboards are probably wiped away and you're just going to talk to it. So it's actually a really important skill that all kids need to learn as well.
Their confidence in speaking, because they have to learn to speak quite clearly and not mumble. Yeah. The computer will pick things up better if they speak more clearly, more slowly. So it helps them think about all that sort of thing, presentations and just being able to speak to people, which is something that even adults really struggle. I know I do. I find it really hard to be able to, speak in certain situations like this. And
yeah, but you're doing a great job. You've been practicing in front of the text-to-speech. I want to bring up, I've got a kid in mind that you had. She's gorgeous. And writing was obviously one of the other things. And you used a Google tool to engage her. Slides. Remember slides? So
good coaching.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that level of engagement through the slides that you did?
Sure. It was a little bit before we really got into assistive technology. I'd sort of just started out on that path. We were trying to get her engaged. She struggled a lot. Really awesome kid. Actually very bright, very outgoing, and had a lot of amazing ideas. But like a lot of kids, really hard to get anything, out of
down on,
because they didn't know how. They don't know how to get it from here to here. So we talked about things that she liked. And this is what I've done with most of my kids that I work with, one-on-one or in small groups. We talk about things that interest them. We find something that they would enjoy, a passion project, or if they want to do a display or something along those lines. And we came up with an idea that she wanted to write a book for the school that we could use for new kids that came into the school so that they would know where to go, where the bathrooms are, who the teachers are, who the principal is, the classrooms and all the other areas where they could play, who they could hang out with, where they could find friends, all that sort of thing. We planned it all out. We used slides. We had a different slide for each page, and she voice typed everything. It all comes up down the bottom, and then she goes through and listens and then decides what needs changing, cuts and pastes. We went and took a whole lot of photos. She had to put them on there, and we came up with this great book. And it was fantastic. And it was something at the end of it that, it wasn't just there's my piece of writing, that's great. It was, she had something that she could say, I wrote this.
Yeah, she left her mark.
Who loved fidget toys, absolutely loved fidget toys, and they were all the rage. And she did a project on those. And I said, okay, well, you can, but we need to research. We need to find out not just, that's a cool coloured fidget toy and it makes these cool sounds. What is the purpose of a fidget toy? She would have been year 6 or 7 at the time. And she went through, did a whole lot of research on, why fidget toys are good for the brain and what they can help with and why they work. And it's, she figured out it wasn't just a toy that they,
it was actually
and she was able to explain that She took photos of her favourite ones and she did surveys and, she put together graphs, all sorts of things just to use those.
Really cool.
Those.
The tool that you said, because she would have had to do some research. So what was the tool you said that you used that they could voice search or whatever it was?
I believe it's Speechify, and if you put that onto your computer, you can use it on anything like websites. Okay. You can push play at certain parts of websites and it will read out loud the text to you.
Cool. We'll put some of these in the show notes, won't we, Mark? So we can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we can have a little chat about that after the interview too. We just go through some of our favourite tools for accessibility. Yeah. I'm really interested in how you actually learn a lot of this, Nic, because for a lot of teacher aides, they wouldn't know where to start. I know we've talked about Marjorie, and you've had her coming in, and obviously having a good relationship with whoever it is that's supporting you in a leadership role. Was there anything else that you did to get across some of these tools or find out things that you could use for these students? I
see that the thing is that there's nothing really out there, right, at the moment. This is the problem that we're finding is that
wow. We've got. I have to say, we now have a lot of funding for teacher aides. Okay, so the ministry have now put across some funding for teacher aides to do some PLD, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I got an email the other day, but a lot of it's all to do with like introduction to teacher aides and how you can help in the class.
Wow.
Things like that. And I looked at it.
Well, Bex has got something to tell you about. Wow. This is a good introduction, Bex.
This is what you didn't even know you did a segue until you did a segue, Nic, to be fair, because that's something that we are totally offering right now. It's
great for someone that's just getting into, starting out in teacher aiding. Mm. But what about someone like me or
been doing it for 7 years?
That needs that little bit more.
Yeah, especially with a lot of the features and a lot of the tools that are coming out now. There are so many AI integrations that will really help every learner, but just be so perfect for a lot of those students who have got learning difficulties that you're supporting in the classroom. So Bex, can you suggest something, and then Nic will go, wow, that's amazing. Where do I sign up? Do you want to tell her what we're running?
This was totally not supposed to happen this way, by the way. This was honestly just happened. But
that wasn't planned at all.
Absolutely. No, exactly. Obviously, you haven't got my email. Yeah, so there's only a certain amount of PLD providers like us that have been certified to be able to implement this PD. And so we've put together a certified teacher aid program, which runs over a space of 6 months. Is it, Mark? 6 months.
2 terms. Yeah, it's a digital teacher aid. So we wanted to be able to give some accreditation to people too. Yeah. So it's very much an online coaching program, and it's little and often. So it's 3 calls a term. So for New Zealand, it's in New Zealand at the moment, and it's towards the end. The funding finishes at the end of term 4, so it all has to be wrapped up in this year. And so it starts at the beginning of term 3. So we've got the rest of this term to try and get as many people into those cohorts. We're going to have a Google, an Apple, and a Microsoft cohort too. And then you jump online with one of our trainers, you connect up with other teacher aides who are doing similar things, you're sharing ideas. It's a real community building approach, and then there's some coaching and some training and some online modules that will send you that get you across a lot of the tools and how you can implement them in the right way for learning outcomes. So that's what that looks like. Does that sound like it would be interesting to you?
100%.
Yeah, and you get and you do get some
remuneration.
That's the one, for doing it as well.
So you get paid for your time from the ministry pool as well. And so for people who are leading a school outside of New Zealand that don't have access to that, or maybe you're allocating your funds in other directions, what kinds of support, I guess, Bex, this is a question for all of us. If we were going to design a learning program for our support staff, our learning aides, our teacher aides, what would that look like? Because I know one of the challenges that we had in putting this program together was getting around the time poverty, the fact that you don't have any release time, the fact that sometimes you've got families and other commitments around, it's not like you can take a day off or you can sort of just stay after school, because a lot of people have got other commitments as well. What would a program look like from your perspective if someone was going to design the ideal learning program for you?
From my perspective?
Yeah, what would you want out of it?
Yeah, any of us.
So I think one of the key things is I think a lot of teacher aides are probably not aware that there is help out there. I think that's something that needs to be really well advertised. And I think for me, for a long time, I wasn't able to have any help outside of, our school bubble. So knowing that there is the help out there is really important. So I think really important to get that pushed out to the teacher aides so they know they don't have to wing it.
Because that's what it does feel like, I know, half the time, because you feel like you just get thrown into things. You say, can you do this right now? And there's there's some teachers that are really good because they plan what you need to be and they have those conferences with you. And Nic is also incredible because she does actually stay behind school most days and does get her stuff organised, and then also attends PD, that the teachers attend PD, so she's across it. She does it all off her own back. So that's also another reason why Nic's so where she is today. She takes massive initiative in things, but that's not the case for everyone in terms of having that teacher support, being able to work with them and give them guidance. It's sometimes you just get thrown in. I see teacher aides that just go into the class and they kind of sit there and they have to wait until the teacher actually even talks to them, let alone know what they're doing or who they're working with that day. So, I think it's that clear communication, right, Nic? Yeah. Just being really clear and open with the teacher aides and making sure support staff or learning. I really like that learning assistant thing because they absolutely are. I'm gonna move it to that.
Well, that's what they're there for. Effectively, they're there for the learner.
I feel very privileged where I am. I'm actually respected as a staff member and treated as a staff member. I don't know that it's the same for all teacher aides. I've not taught anywhere else, so I do feel very much part of the school.
And I think that is changing, Nic. Bex, I know that is something that is changing every year. You hear more and more. If there is a teacher-only day, then you'll see the support staff, the learning aides there with them. And that's very common. We're often running, as a company, running teacher-only days, and all of the teacher aides will be there with the teachers as well. So that's really important, isn't it? So anything that we do, I always suggest that you get the learning support staff involved in it, because you can't just expect them to kind of pick things up and run with it. They've got to understand the big picture and be a part of the staff meetings and all those types of things. And now that your contract conditions are being improved, you're actually being paid a little bit better, you're being given some more allocation for training like we're doing. That is more and more something that we're seeing, right?
Yeah, what you're looking at doing, just knowing what tools are out there to help kids learn.
Yeah, and feel confident, right? Just as you said, as soon as they get their confidence, they just start shooting for the stars, and they can see the smile on their face and their peps in their step, and they're walking around going, "I've got this." It's just so cool. Yeah. And you definitely have given that to so many kids, Nic, and we're grateful for you and all that you do in schools. And there should be hundreds of you around New Zealand, I bet, as well. But Nic, we're so grateful that you've come on today. You've pushed yourself out of the comfort zone. People can push. That's where you need to live, is outside that comfort zone.
Yes.
But you're doing an incredible job, Nic, and thank you so much for coming on with us today. And we will talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Bex, I know you've got some takeaways after that conversation. It does make me think, I think we're slowly working through all of your old school contacts and probably half of the staff from your old school. We're working our way through. It was a great chat. Tell us about some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, look, I worked with some incredible people. Yeah, I think the main things as a leader is always remember to treat your teacher aides like a key member of your teaching team. Yeah. So that involves involving them in the professional learning. Invite them to the teacher only days. They actually love being part of it, and I think the incidental learning from it, as well as the culture building, is just priceless. I think the other thing to really remember is communication. So it's so important to be clear in expectations, clear with what's going on in the school. Make sure they're on the staff email lists so that they feel part of the family. I know that they just drop off sometimes, and it really does affect the culture. And ultimately, you want happy staff, because that means the kids will get the happiest teachers and get the most out of their learning, right? So it's just about 100%. That whole culture thing. Another thing I did was I met with the teacher aides once a week, just for half an hour, like just before morning, because it is hard to find a time because some of them are attached to the kids, but even sort of 10 minutes before lunchtime, and it kind of went for sort of 5 minutes into lunchtime, and make sure that they were across everything that was happening in the school, that they felt like they were, was there any roadblocks, what was happening in the class, was anything that they needed to talk about. But I also gave sort of PD tips and tricks in that time as well. So if something did come new that was across my desk, desk, maybe there was a new app, or maybe there was something, new resources that were coming out, to share that at that time as well. So it's just that connection point, and it means that then they have that clear line of communication with SLT. And then also, this is something that Nic brought up, which was completely incidental. We were not going on a sales pitch on this. About
you may not have. But I had it top of mind. Yeah.
But let's talk about when they need to feel like they've got some professional learning going on. They need to feel like they're part of professional learning. And this opportunity that the ministry in New Zealand have put out there, and Aussie, I know that you're really keen also on getting your teacher aides across the new things that are coming out. Mark, do you want to talk about our certified digital teacher aid course that we've just dropped?
Yeah, we have been running certified programs for a while now. We have a leadership program, we have a STEAM learning program, and what we've done is we've just adapted it to make it suitable for teacher aides. So all of the content is aimed at the types of tools and the types of learning strategies that teacher aides would use, learning support staff would use with their students. So things that are going to help them get more engagement, more out of the assistive tech tools that they've got, because like came up in the interview, a lot of teacher aides don't know the tools that are out there, or if they do, they kind of know one or two and they stick to them, but they're being developed all the time. And there are lots of things that aren't even specifically assistive tech tools, but that are ways to engage their students that I know that a lot of teacher aides would love to jump on. So the way it runs is it's in the afternoon, so it's around about the end, the last hour of the day. So if a principal or a leader wanted to release the support staff to be able to go to that program, combine students together, combine classes, that type of thing, they can do that. But there is also a time slot that's just after the end of school too. So if they stuck around for an hour, sat in a classroom, opened up the laptop, it's all remote, it's online, but it's live. So there are recorded modules that are sent to the TAs, and then there are also face-to-face conversations that they're having with the trainer online. And the way we've organised it is it's 3 calls for a term, over 2 terms, so it's 6 calls, some online modules that they can watch. They can double speed them or watch them at 1.5 speed, that kind of thing. But then we've also organised it as a Google, Apple and a Microsoft cohort. So they can be put into the right cohort for the right tool that they're working on. And a lot of the tools that they're using, they apply to junior students and they apply to senior students as well. That's how we've kind of structured it. The link to that program will be in the show notes, and it starts in term 3. And I know that Australia and New Zealand, the terms are around about the same. But if you have a look at our website there, you'll get the exact start date.
Cool. Do you want to talk about any of our favourite tools quickly before we leave as well? So they spoke about Moat, which is an audio comments recorded. Yep. Yeah, so that's a free tool that you can download. There is a subscription version for that. We'll have a link in the show notes that you can go. That's one of our favourites. We always share that. Our trainers are always sharing that because it works across platform. Anything that's online is a collaborative document. You can sign up for that for your students. You can record your voice and it comes up as a little audio button that they click on and they get that visual or the read aloud of that comment, which is fantastic. Text Help is the other one that has come up, and that's super popular. That is a paid version as well, but it's really worthwhile. So if you can get funding for those learners, if it's not something that you have across your whole class, even if you have it enabled for those students that would get some help out of it, that's a tool that can dictate your voice to the screen and it will record it as text, or it can work the other way as well around. So if they're on the web, any kind of digital artifact that they're looking at, they can highlight things and it'll read it out to them. But also being aware that there are dictation tools in just about every platform hardwired in. So Google Docs, Microsoft Teams, Note, OneNote, that type of thing. On an iPad, the whole operating system has a speech to text tool that you can click on. So if you hold your finger down, do a long press, it'll come up with speech to text. If you're not too sure about that, reach out to one of us. Team at Using Technology Better would definitely be able to help you with that, get that enabled in the settings and show you how to use those and get some training for you. But can I just give one more as well? When we were talking about dictation, it reminded me of a new app that I've just downloaded on my phone, because often, I'm one of those ideas people, and I'll be probably not in the shower. It probably won't work with a watch so much because you might have to have it in water mode. But, when I'm driving, I'll be listening to a podcast and I think, I really want to remember to do that, or I'll get a good idea where I'm walking. But you don't want to get your phone out because, number one, your phone won't work. I tried doing that today. Hey, Siri, take a voice note. She's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that while you're driving. Oh, come on,
what
Siri.
Use are you?
Keep up.
So, and I just turned Siri on with my HomePod in the background. So that was a rookie mistake, Bex. But there's an app that you can download if you're in the Apple ecosystem.
My HomePod in the background, so that note.
See, it's taking a dictation note right now. Anyway, so let me tell you about this app on the phone that you download, and then you get a version of it on your watch, and it's called Bear. You can make a complication, so I can just lift up my watch, tap it, and then start a new note, and it will dictate straight away, because the Notes app, for some reason at the moment, Apple doesn't allow you to dictate it to it. So you can just hit a button, start recording, and if it's a reminder, you can do a reminder. But if I'm like, hey, here's a really good idea for a podcast episode, I can just go and it'll come up as a note that'll sync to my phone. So really cool little dictation tool. I think keyboards, like you said, I think keyboards are going to go by the way, and dictation will come in, especially with, here's a link to last week's episode when we're talking about the AI integrated tools. Did you see the Google I.O. release that came up since we published that episode, where, like, for example, Copilot in Gmail, you'll be able to click on Copilot in Gmail and say, reply to this email, tell them that I want a full refund, and it'll write the email for you. You'll be able to adapt it and then send it off, but you won't even need to touch the keyboard to be able to do that. Pretty amazing, eh?
So good. Yes.
Yeah. So those are some really cool tools that you can go to, whether you're supporting a student in your class, whether you're supporting, as a leader, you're supporting your support team to be able to support those learners, or you're just random Joe wanting to take a note on your phone. So we've got links in the show notes if you want to click on those and share those with as many people as you want. We're always keen for you to be able to subscribe. So if you're listening to this episode and you think, oh, there might be some other episodes that I'd quite like to check out, go to Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We've got lots of different episodes now. I think we're up to 16 now, Bex, and we're aiming for that 23. I've mentioned it before. 1% of all podcasts get to episode 23, I think it is. So we're well over halfway. So we're getting there. And if you know someone who would get value, hit the share button on that podcast link, and then you can share it with as many people as you like. If you have some support staff in your school who get some inspiration out of listening to this episode with Nic, definitely share that with them as well. Yep. And if you've got any questions with us, as I have said before, you can email us at team@usingtechnologybetter. We'd love to hear from you, and see you all next week.